After nearly 3 decades, Prince William has done the unthinkable. He's opened the sealed envelope King Charles vowed to keep hidden forever. Inside, a handwritten promise made beside Princess Diana's coffin in the early hours of August 31st, 1997. 4 vows, 4 betrayals, and a truth that could fracture everything the monarchy tried to preserve. William didn't open it for power, but for answers. Why did Charles write it? Why hide it for 27 years? And what painful truths about Diana's death, their broken family, and the crown did William finally uncover? This changes everything. The secret that was never meant to be heard. It was 8:14 a.m. early Thursday when Prince William stepped quietly into Clarence House, earlier than expected. He'd hoped to speak with King Charles alone before the official day began. But just as he approached the royal study, voices echoed through the half-open door. One was unmistakably his father's, the other unknown. But it was a single line, said clearly and sharply by Charles, that froze William in place. If either of my sons ever learns what I wrote that day, it would destroy what little relationship we have left. The words hit hard. William's breath caught. He wasn't meant to hear that. The weight of it, the secrecy, the fear, sent a chill through him. This wasn't about speeches or strategy. It was about something personal, something buried. He stepped back, silently leaving the corridor, heart pounding. That sentence wasn't just dramatic. It was desperate. And William, now more curious than ever, knew this couldn't be ignored. There was something his father had locked away, and it sounded dangerous. Later that day, William called in his private secretary. No palace gossip, no drama, just a quiet directive. Look for any sealed royal documents dated after Diana's death in September 1997. Hours later, the reply came. A single document was found, wax-sealed, stored in the Royal Archives vault, marked Restricted Level 3, dated September 2nd, 1997. The only people listed as having viewed or signed off on it were King Charles, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the head of vault security. Not even Queen Elizabeth had opened it. William sat with that knowledge in silence. This wasn't just a letter. It wasn't a forgotten note. It was something formal, something ritualistic, sealed days after Diana's death. Why would his father write something so secret and then bury it away for over 27 years? He could feel it in his bones. This wasn't a reflection. It was a royal oath, a coffin-side vow that had been locked in the dark for nearly 3 decades. The next day, William didn't wait for a schedule or royal clearance. At exactly 7 p.m., he arrived at Buckingham Palace, unannounced, and requested to speak to his father, alone. This wasn't a polite chat. It was something heavier. The document was real, and the time for silence had passed. He didn't care about palace walls or consequences. What William wanted was simple: answers. And in the space between father and son, a confrontation was about to erupt that would shake the House of Windsor. The confrontation at Buckingham Palace. William didn't ease into the conversation. As Charles entered the private drawing room, the air turned still. "I know about the document you sealed after Mum died," William said calmly. "I want to read it." The clock on the wall ticked past 7:07 p.m., but time seemed to stop. Charles's face drained of color. His response came slowly, like it hurt to say, "Some truths are better left buried with the dead." But William wasn't backing down. You made that document just days after August 31st, 1997, he pressed. It's been sealed for over 27 years. You made a vow beside her coffin, didn't you? Charles shifted, visibly uncomfortable. It was private. For me, not for you, he said, voice defensive. William's tone turned icy. If it was truly private, why involve the Archbishop of Canterbury? Why seal it in a national archive? He stepped closer. This wasn't about grief. This was about guilt. Charles tried again to delay. It's too painful. Once you read it, you cannot unread it. William didn't flinch. I'll ask one more time. Show me. Or I go to court. The room fell into a silence so thick it felt like stone. Charles, visibly defeated, rubbed his temples and finally nodded. All right, but you need to understand, once it's open, there's no undoing it. William didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything. Open it. The door was now cracked, and behind it lay not just family secrets, but broken promises made in a moment of royal tragedy. Charles knew this was the price of delaying the truth for too long, and William, tired of piecing together his family's history through whispers, was about to stare it in the face. Just after 10:42 p.m., the vault was opened beneath Buckingham Palace for the first time in nearly 3 decades. The wax-sealed envelope was placed in William's hands, untouched since September 1997. It was signed, witnessed, sealed in grief. And inside it were 4 vows, handwritten by King Charles beside Diana's body. This wasn't just a letter, it was the unfiltered truth, a father's raw confessions. And with trembling hands, William began to read the promises that had shaped and shattered his life. Inside the vault. The room was cold, concrete walls, a single overhead light. At the center, the velvet-lined tray held a sealed envelope, its red wax marked with the official seal of the Prince of Wales. The date on the outside read 2nd of September 1997, 03:26 a.m. As William broke the seal, the room felt suspended in time. Charles stood behind him, silent, arms crossed. The letter inside was handwritten, 4 promises, signed in ink, 4 vows beside a coffin. William read the first aloud. I vow to tell William and Harry the complete truth about their mother's death. But that truth had never come. For years, they received curated versions, press releases, palace statements. Nothing raw, nothing real. Charles had promised to be the one to tell them, and he never did. The second line shook him more. I vow never to let my sons become estranged, no matter what. William blinked, thinking of Harry. The silence, the distance, the interviews, the years. That vow had shattered completely. Charles had promised unity, but let division grow year after year. The pain of that betrayal pulsed in William's chest like a wound freshly reopened. The third vow struck a softer chord. I vow to preserve Diana's voice and values in their upbringing and royal roles. But William remembered how quickly Diana's presence was erased from the palace. The warmth, the humanity, the way she connected with people. It was replaced by protocol. He remembered feeling that loss in small, quiet ways throughout his teens, especially after 2002, when public memory of her began to fade. That vow had been broken, too. But it was the final vow, the 4th promise, that hit the hardest. As William unfolded the last page, he saw the words he'd never expected his father to write. A promise to confess the truth about his marriage to Diana, the affairs, the timelines, and the role Camilla played in their family's destruction. William stared at the ink like it might burn through the paper. This wasn't just a broken promise. It was the lie that shaped their entire past. The most explosive promise of all. The fourth vow began with a date William recognized instantly. 1st September 1997, written in Charles's tight handwriting. The sentence beneath it crushed the air from the room. I vow to reveal the truth of my marriage to Diana, including affairs, timelines, and my relationship with Camilla. William stared at the words, remembering how he learned most things in 2005, not from his father, but from television. He remembered the headlines, the documentaries, the whispers at Eton. All the details a son shouldn't have to piece together alone. He continued reading. Charles had listed 3 separate timelines, including the year 1986, the year he claimed the relationship with Camilla emotionally resumed. William knew these lines weren't lies. They were confessions he had needed decades earlier. Instead, he'd been forced to form his own truth. He remembered asking questions at age 16, getting vague answers that avoided every sharp edge. Now, those edges were carved into paper, untouched for nearly 27 years. The second half of the page listed belongings Diana had requested for her sons, written in 1993 and confirmed again in 1996. Jewelry, letters, recordings, a watch she wore in 1981, and a journal she kept during the first 10 years of marriage. William felt his stomach twist when he saw check marks beside them. Some he had received, some he never had. Charles's note at the bottom admitted, "I withheld items I feared would deepen their pain." But withholding had done exactly that. William looked up at his father. His voice was steady but sharp. "You destroyed these promises." Charles looked shattered. "I meant them. I failed to keep them." For a moment, they weren't king and heir. They were father and son, held together by regret. But the most painful truth didn't come from the vow itself. It came 3 days later. Charles requested a meeting at Highgrove on the 12th of September, bringing a folder marked Personal, 1997. Inside were documents, phone transcripts, and reports William had never seen. They held Charles's version of the last hours of Diana's life. And one detail, one call made just hours before the crash, would change how William understood that night forever. The truth about the night. Diana died. 3 days later, at 4:11 p.m., William arrived at Highgrove House, unsure what to expect. Charles sat waiting, a folder on the table labeled 31st August 1997, Paris. Inside were transcripts of Diana's final calls. One was made at 10:23 p.m., less than 3 hours before the crash. In it, she sounded angry, furious even. She told Charles she felt hunted. She said she needed freedom, just one night without cameras or guards. Charles admitted he dismissed it as emotion, not danger. A statement at the bottom of the page chilled William. She asked for security to be removed for the night. She said it made her feel trapped. William froze. He had been told all his life that Diana had resisted heavy protection because she didn't trust the palace. But hearing she'd asked for a break just hours before the crash shifted everything. Security notes from MI5 revealed that because Diana was no longer an official royal, certain alerts were not escalated. A request for additional support made on 28 August 1997 had gone unanswered. William turned the page. There were warnings, 3 of them, one from Scotland Yard, one from French authorities, one from Diana's own driver from 2 nights earlier. All expressed concern about aggressive paparazzi. None were acted upon. Charles rubbed his face with both hands and said, "She told me she didn't feel safe. I thought it was temporary panic. I didn't listen. That is my failure." William felt cold. Was it an accident? Or something darker? Charles answered quietly, "It wasn't murder, but it wasn't fate either. It was negligence, systemic failure, and we all played a part." The truth hit harder than any conspiracy. But nothing prepared William for the final set of papers. These weren't official reports. They were personal notes written by Charles between the 1st and 5th of September 1997, during the quiet days after Diana's passing. They described guilt, fear, indecision, and a confession he'd never dared speak aloud. When Charles handed them over, William realized this wasn't about monarchy anymore. It was about the deepest truth of all, the truth that shattered the bond between father and son. The confession that shattered William. The final documents were dated 1st September, 2nd September, and 5th September 1997, the week Diana died. Charles had handwritten them at 2 a.m., 3:40 a.m., and 11:15 p.m., unable to sleep. In them, he admitted what no royal statement ever had. She was right to feel unsafe. We dismissed her warnings. We left her exposed. William read every line slowly, each sentence weighing heavier than the last. This wasn't palace failure. This was personal confession. A report attached to the notes revealed 3 key failures: the delayed request for an escort car at 11:50 p.m., miscommunication between the Ritz staff and security at 12:12 a.m., and an unapproved change of route at 12:19 a.m. William felt sick reading the timestamps. Each minute told a story of chaos. Each decision showed the absence of someone taking charge. The tragedy was not entirely accidental. It was built on oversight stacked for months. Charles spoke softly. "Your mother said she felt left behind. And the truth is, she was." His voice cracked. "I feared you'd hate me if I told you everything. So I stayed silent, for me, not for you." William closed his eyes, hearing the truth he didn't know he needed. The tragedy had not been a singular crash. It had been years of neglect and underestimation. Diana hadn't been protected, not by the institution, not by those closest to her. The last note was the hardest to read. "My silence built the wall between my sons. My silence destroyed my vows." William folded the paper and exhaled shakily. For the first time, he saw his father not as a king or a symbol, but as a flawed man who had run from truth because it hurt too much to face. And among all the broken promises, one stood out. Promise 2. The vow to keep William and Harry united. It was the promise Charles had shattered most completely. William knew the next step wasn't about documents. It was about fixing the living wound between brothers. And with the truth now in the open, he told his father plainly, "You broke it. Now you repair it." The path to healing was about to begin. The promise to heal the brothers' rift. Of all the broken promises, the second vow was the most personal and the most devastating. "I vow never to let William and Harry become estranged, no matter what the crown demands." Charles had failed, and William was done protecting him from the consequences. After their last meeting at Highgrove, William stood in silence, holding the fourth page of the coffin vow in his hands. "You let us fall apart," he said. "Now you're going to fix it." Charles looked hollow. His voice was quiet. "He won't take my call." William didn't blink. "Then write. Go in person. Beg if you have to." 3 days later, on the 18th of September 2025, Charles made the call anyway, to Harry in California. The tone was awkward, the pauses long, but Harry listened. And when Charles admitted there was a sealed vow made in 1997, Harry's reaction was one of disbelief and pain. "And you kept it from us?" he asked. Charles didn't offer excuses. "I broke all 4 promises. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to come and hear them for yourself." Surprisingly, Harry didn't hang up. He said only 4 words. "If William's there, I'll come." By 22nd September, arrangements were made. The meeting would be held at Birkhall, the King's private estate in Scotland. No press, no courtiers, just Charles, William, and Harry, together for the first time in over 2 years. The room was set without formality. No suits, no staff, just tea, old photographs, and documents that had remained sealed since the final week of August 1997. Charles didn't lead the conversation. He let his sons speak, and speak they did, freely, angrily, and for once, honestly. Charles eventually admitted it all, that he had shown favoritism, that the pressures of the institution made him hesitate in defending either of them, that he had used tradition to avoid truth. He said it plainly. "I was afraid of both of you, because you remind me of her." The brothers sat in silence. Then William said, "Diana didn't want a perfect family. She just wanted a loyal one." And for the first time in decades, Charles cried in front of both his sons, not as king, but as a man who knew he had failed them both. That night, Charles left the estate early, leaving William and Harry alone. The air was tense, but quieter. For hours, the brothers walked the grounds of Birkhall like they did as boys in Balmoral, remembering, venting, grieving. No aides, no audience, just truth. For the first time in years, they weren't adversaries. They were brothers again, flawed, hurt, but trying. What followed next wasn't scripted or expected. It was the long overdue conversation that Diana had always wanted for her sons. William and Harry. It was just after 10:15 p.m. when William and Harry sat down on the garden bench behind the house. No security, no royal formality, just 2 sons, tired of silence. Harry broke it first. "Do you remember what Mum made us promise?" William nodded without looking up. "Always stick together." The words hung in the cool Scottish air like a ghost. It had been nearly 28 years since Diana's death, but her influence was still the only thing strong enough to pull them back into the same orbit. Harry confessed first. "When I left in 2020, it wasn't because I hated you. It was because I didn't think you saw me anymore." William stayed quiet. Then he replied, "When you left, I didn't know how to reach you. Everything felt like a headline." They both admitted something they'd never said. Their anger had masked grief. Their public feud had been easier to carry than their private pain. And in choosing loyalty to duty, they had both lost something personal. They remembered the days after Diana died, how they clung to each other in September 1997, walked behind her coffin in front of the world, and were told to be strong. William was 15. Harry was 12. They were not comforted. They were watched. "We should have been allowed to fall apart together," Harry said. William nodded. "But instead, we were trained to pretend." That night, no cameras captured their conversation, but for the first time in years, the silence between them was filled with understanding instead of tension. By 2:23 a.m., they returned to the house. They didn't pretend everything was fixed, but they agreed to try. William said, "We don't owe the monarchy anything if it costs us each other." Harry agreed, "Honoring Mum doesn't mean protecting the crown. It means protecting each other." That night, they sent Charles one final message. "We're not pretending anymore. The vow may have been broken, but we're choosing to honor it ourselves." 2 weeks later, on the 5th of October, the palace issued a short but powerful statement. Prince William had made a decision. The world needed to know the truth. The coffin promise would no longer remain sealed. A carefully worded announcement revealed its existence and intent. Diana's sons had made their choice, not to protect the past, but to confront it. And when Charles followed with his own rare admission of guilt, the world responded with something no one expected: grace. The coffin promise goes public. On the morning of the 5th of October 2025, the Palace Press Office released a simple statement from Prince William. It confirmed the long-rumored existence of a sealed vow made by King Charles beside Princess Diana's body on the night of her death. For nearly 3 decades, this promise remained hidden. But silence has only deepened our pain, William wrote. It's time to acknowledge it, and its failure. My brother and I are now choosing to honor it in our way. Public reaction was instant. Global headlines lit up within hours. News outlets across London, New York, Sydney, and Johannesburg reported the vow's content. 4 promises: truth, unity, preservation, confession. But what struck people most wasn't the promise. It was the fact that it had been broken. Charles, for his part, released a separate message. I failed to keep the words I wrote beside Diana's body. My son was right to confront me. His courage is his mother's. It was the most vulnerable the king had ever sounded. Across the UK, tributes to Diana began to appear. Notes, flowers, and letters were laid at Kensington Palace and Althorp. Messages from the public poured in, thousands. Many praised William and Harry for their honesty. Others mourned what had been lost in the name of royal tradition. For the first time in decades, the monarchy wasn't being attacked. It was being invited to change. The vow's release had shifted something, not just in the family, in the nation. Behind the scenes, Diana's personal effects, those listed in the sealed document, were returned to her sons: a sapphire necklace, 2 journals, audio tapes from 1995. These were no longer museum pieces. They were memories, coming home. And in that moment, Diana's presence felt closer than ever. Not in a headline, not in a photograph, but in a truth finally spoken. 10 days later, with no media, no fanfare, and no press pool, William and Harry made a private journey to Althorp, to Diana's final resting place. For the first time in over a decade, they stood together in silence. No titles, no roles, just sons. They brought flowers. They whispered apologies. And for the first time since 1997, the silence around her death felt lifted. The vow made in grief was finally being honored, not with words, but with action. A family begins to heal. It was the 15th of October 2025, and the autumn leaves were falling at Althorpe Estate, where Diana had been laid to rest 28 years earlier. William and Harry stood side by side for the first time in years. No photographers, no statements, no performance. They brought with them a small bouquet of white roses and a folded copy of the unsealed vow. There were no speeches, just soft words, shared glances, and a silence that said what their voices couldn't. Charles had chosen not to attend. It wasn't avoidance, it was respect. "This is theirs," he had told aides the night before, "and I've done enough talking." For a man once known for his reserve, it was the most emotional decision he could make. He remained at Birkhall, watching the ceremony in private through security footage, but without sound. He didn't want to hear it. He only wanted to know it had happened. That day, the royal family didn't heal completely. They didn't transform overnight. But something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in decades, the monarchy had chosen humanity over image. And it had been forced, not by scandal, but by sons who refused to let their mother be buried in silence. The vow had been made in a moment of darkness, but it was finally being lived in the light. As William and Harry left the estate, no words were exchanged. They didn't need to be. The vow had once been a secret between a grieving father and his guilt. Now it was a legacy, a living reminder that truth, even when delayed, still has the power to heal. Diana's voice had been silenced too soon, but through her sons, it now echoed louder than ever. The vow, once locked in silence, is now a living reckoning. Prince William didn't release the coffin promise to shame his father, but to honor his mother. Charles, for the first time, faced what he buried in grief and guilt. And as William and Harry stood at Diana's grave, together, not apart, the promise became more than paper. It became healing. The monarchy didn't fall, but it finally bent toward truth, toward legacy, toward Diana. Her voice, once silenced, now echoes through her sons. And in breaking the vow's silence, they've started writing a new one together.